Good afternoon, Ashley here. The topic of this video is how to die. It's all about death. This video, topic of conversation that actually we don't really speak about death, even though it's like the only thing in this world that's inevitable. We very rarely talk about it. It's very we talk about how we can avoid it, but we don't actually discuss death. It's all about avoiding it and protecting yourself, and it's sort of come up this morning for me as I was listening to a podcast, the Daily Stoic podcast by Ryan Holiday on Spotify, and he was talking about Seneca's books on death and the letters he wrote to people, and you can have a search for the podcast, and if you search for the Daily Stoic podcast in Spotify, it's the last one. It's a 30-minute episode, and he featured a sample of an Audible book called How to Die by Jon Rahm, not a golfer, the author, Jon Rahm. I think it's Jonramm. And yeah, sort of just about to go for a run, and started to listening to this sample of a podcast, and it sort of really started to resonate with me about death and some of the words that Seneca used and some of the lines out of the book. And I started listening to it, and I made a few notes about some of the passages about death, and it sort of really allowed me to think, allowed me to reflect about death, and allowed me to think about different fears, and how all fears always have an origin, a source of death. For example, when you're scared of running out of money, when you're scared of getting sick, when you're scared of being alone, when you're scared of losing your house, when you're scared of not being able to eat, when you're scared of not having shelter, the source of these fears always with death, because you can ask yourself, okay, what would happen if I got sick? What next after being sick? Well, I might go to the doctors. Okay, what next? Well, give me some tablets. Okay, what next? I take tablets and they don't work. Okay, what next? Hospital. Okay, what next? Operation. Still diseases. What next after operation? Get even more sick. What next? Get told I'm going to die. Then next, death. Okay, money. What if I run out? What if I go broke? What if I've got no money? Well, no money to eat, no money to shelter. Okay, what next? Well, I'll be on the streets. No money, no food. Okay, what next? No one gives me any money. No one gives me shelter. Okay, what next? Well, starve to death. Might die of being cold, and get sick, and then go to hospital, get told I'm gonna die, and then death. So that's money, relationships, being alone. What next? Well, start feeling depressed, emotional. Go to the hospital, die. So can you see how every fear, we're not really scared of the thing. We're not really scared of not enough money. We're not really scared of being alone. We're not scared of getting enough clients, not getting enough clients. We're not really scared of getting sick. We're scared of death, because that's when you keep asking yourself, like, what if, what next, it always ends up with death. It can only, because everything else is just temporary. everything else has a reverse clause. You can always, when you have enough money, you can always earn more money. When you get sick, you can always recover. When you lose your wife, or not lose your wife leaves, you always get another wife. When you don't get enough attention, you can always get some ever attention from somewhere else. So everything else apart from death has a reverse clause. Obviously death is death. It's a final. That's the only thing that is final. All the rest is always a way back, if you're aware of that. So based on that, then we're not really scared of the thing. We're not really scared of getting sick. We're not really scared of, because when we're scared of being sick, we're really scared of dying, and we're basically being ignorant to the fact that death is certain. And I'm going to read a few lines out of the book I've been reading, and from that you can get on Amazon, How to Die. But yeah, I've took some lines out of a book that is on a podcast, the Daily Stoic podcast. Those who fear death cannot help the living. Those who fear death cannot help the living. So I guess the question is, do you fear death? Because it's come to me that, okay, if I'm scared of dying, then how can I expect to help others? Because if we're scared of something, then the likelihood is that we're going to, whoever we're with, whoever we're in a relationship with, we're going to drag that other person into your fear. That's how fears work. We bring other people into our fears unconsciously. We're unconsciously doing it just by discussion, by energy, and yeah, through agreements, through discussions, through the same way of thinking, and not being aware. And yeah, so yeah, we can't expect other people to be not scared, not be scared of death when we're scared of death ourselves. And yeah, it's Kyle Cease was talking about, would you rather get help off someone who has done all hours and hours of parachute training, 1,000 hours of parachute training, done all the training but never actually done the parachute jump? Or would you rather get help, or would you rather get helped to jump out of a plane to someone who's done loads of parachute jumps? So it's the same theory. What would you rather do? So if you wanted to do a parachute jump and you looking for lessons on how to do a parachute jump, would you go to a person who's done thousands of hours of training on how to jump out of a plane and do a parachute jump, but has never jumped out of a parachute, jumped out of a plane? Or would you rather get trained on how to parachute jump, who's actually jumped out of a plane loads of time but not done any training? Same theory. Would you get help of someone who is scared of, who talks about not being scared of death but actually is scared of death? Yeah, I think that's a theory. I'm not sure, I think I've maybe confused myself there. But yeah, the theory is, well, the bottom line is, those who fear death cannot help other living. Here's another extract. If there's anything troubling, anything troubling or fearsome in this business, it's the fault of the dying. man, not the deaf. If there's anything troubling or fearsome in this business, it's not the fault of the dying man. It's a fault of the dying man, not the deaf. It's a fault of the dying man, not the deaf. If there's anything troubling, so if you're troubled and you fear death, the fear is down to you. It's not death. It's not actual death that you're scared of. It's the dying man that is causing the trouble and fear. There's nothing more worrisome on the act of dying than thereafter a death. Thereafter death. It's just as silly to fear death as to fear old age. It's just as silly to fear death as to fear old age. Because old age is just death. It's just a journey we're on. While I'm shooting this video, I'm dying. And we fear getting old. We fear... Yeah, do we fear old age? Do we fear getting old? Are we fearful of getting old when we know we're getting old every second? It's just as silly to fear death as to fear old age. Whoever doesn't want to die doesn't want to live. Whoever doesn't want to die doesn't want to live. And yeah, for me it's not like desiring to die. It's obviously preferring to live. Longevity, serenity, but the person who accepts death, I'd trust someone who accepts death. Who would you rather trust? Would you trust someone with your life who accepts death? Or would you trust someone with your life who's scared of death? Whoever doesn't want to die doesn't want to live. Whoever doesn't want to die doesn't want to live. How does that feel? Whoever doesn't want to die doesn't want to live. Because you can't live. If you think you're here going to be here forever, then if you don't think death is a thing, then you're not going to want to live because you think you'll be here forever. If you avoid death, if you think you can avoid death, then you are going to take life for granted. If someone actually died and came back from the afterlife and said, and told everyone, death, it's great, it's got all these waterfalls, it's got everything you need, it's got loads of great people there, you can have loads of fun. You'd probably think, you'd probably be relieved, and you'd probably and everyone would probably start killing themselves, wouldn't they, to get to that place. But hang on, that's not what nature wants. Nature wants us to be here to make the most of our life, so we can do good things. And if we're certain that after death it's this great place, then we wouldn't sort of be grateful for living this opportunity we've got. So that's why Mother Nature wants us to be grateful for this life, because everyone would just be killing themselves. No one would want to hear. To fear death is to fear things we are unsure of. Fear is for things we are unsure of. Fear is the things we are unsure of. But death is certain. Fear is for things we are unsure of. Death is a certainty. So yeah, it's a true fear to fear uncertainty. You know, we fear, you know, when we ask someone out on a date, when we do, I don't know, let's use guest speaking. You know, when we go on stage, we might be fearful of the reception of who likes it, who doesn't like it, what will happen on stage, what will happen after it. It's uncertain. Public speaking. But the fear of death is silly, because when we're dead, we know what's going to happen dead. It's just nothing's going to happen. It's certain, and it's going to happen. So fear is born out of certainty, uncertainty, but fear is certain. So why are we scared of death? And we know it's going to happen. And I get the survival. With survival instincts, our survival instincts. But we can be subjective about it. If we understand death, we can be subjective about our survival mode and not get scared of small things. Because the fight or flight response was only built into us so we could run away from Tyrannosaurus Rex. It wasn't built inside of us so we could scared of someone not liking us. So we can actually learn to use our fight or flight response in an effective way when we actually need it, instead of being scared of not having enough money and scared of investing money in yourself, scared of asking someone out in case you said no, scared of public speaking, scared of losing your job, all these trivial things, scared of your girlfriend or boyfriend not messaging you back after an hour, or worry and anxiety. So yeah, it's death. If we learn to love death, embrace it, think how abundant we will. There'll be no need to worry, nothing to fear, because all fears are based on death. As we agree, all fears boil down to death. So imagine being fearless. What would you do if you were fearless? How would you live today? What would you do now? How would you feel now if you were fearless? Would you be scared of that person saying a bad thing to you? Would you be scared of the amount of money you've got, or status, or accomplishment, or achievements, or you've got? Would you be scared of what someone said, or not having a body you wanted? Because the only reason why we're scared of not having the body we want is death. It's we only want that perfect body. It's not for us. It's for other people to get attention, so we look aesthetically good for everyone else. That's the main reason why people want the bodies. It's based on fear. It's based on attention, based on being seen. So we can post it on social media and get lots of likes and follows. And yes, we should prefer health and fitness and wellness. Prefer that. But just knowing it's not in our control, and it's understanding, okay, why. It goes back to why you want that, why you want the perfect body. And in modern society, that's what people look good. So people look good. It's not, that's what people say. People look good for a holiday. It's not. People don't say, oh, I want to get fit to feel revitalized and more energetic and live longer and more energy. Yeah. We're going on to another subject there. But the people who scorn death have not seen death. The people who scorn death are impudent because they've not seen death. So all these people, all these politicians, all these leaders, all these doctors, nurses, scientists who are saying that, who are giving death a bad reputation, have these people actually seen death? Do they actually know? Because we give this death a bad reputation. You know, we promote the avoidance of it. You need to take this drug, you need to take that tablet, you need to take this, eat this food, you need to drink that drink, you need to do that exercise, you need to stand in line. And it's a fear of death. They're doing the best they can, and it's most likely they're scared of death, so they're just passing their fear on. So, and their parents probably were scared of death as well, because we're not having this conversation with ourselves about death. And do we actually know death is a bad place? And these people who are sort of promoting us to protect ourselves from death and stay away from it and not embrace it, and how it's miserable to die, and how it's grim, and how it's bad, and all this in the news about death being bad, and how being sick's get bad, and this and that. All these people, are they actually seen death? Have they actually been to the other side? Because if you haven't, then it's not qualified advice, and no one knows what it's like. Death could be this amazing place for all we know. And yes, I'm not saying we should that we shouldn't be responsible for our health and fitness and wellness. This video is not about that, but this video is all about understanding death, and how, if once you understand, and just give you a perception, and get you thinking actually, what are the motives of these people that are encouraging us to avoid death? I don't know if they have any motives or not, but he who fears death is not willing. He who fears death will not do anything to help the living. Yes, dying fearfully is a cause of death. Dying fearfully is a cause of death. So actually, we don't actually understand that when we're fearing death, we're actually it's actually a cause of death. So if we didn't fear death, then I think fear of death must be high up on one of the causes of deaths. So we think when we're scared of death, we think we're surviving. We think being scared of something absolutely helps us, but that's actually resistance. So what we're resisting, when we're resisting something, we're actually feeding it. We're actually feeding that fear unconsciously, unintentionally. We're actually feeding it. We're actually putting fuel on the fire. But all the fire needs to do is just go out quite naturally. The fire's burning, it'll just go out naturally, in time, and peacefully. But what we're doing, we're feeding it, we're putting fuel in it, putting fuel in this fear of death, and we're building buildings on it, and in this fire, and we're chucking wood on it to keep it burning, and yeah, it's blowing all over the place. smoke's going everywhere, fire's going everywhere. Yeah, just keep putting petrol on it, keep building stuff on it, and when it gets to a stage where it gets so hot. And in the book, the final point I'd like to make about a book is, if death, like how we judge death, it's like it's bad. How we judge death as being bad. But for example, a piece of metal, you could analogy is a piece of metal. It only gets warm when we put it into a hot stove, and it gets cool when we plunge it down into cold water. It's not hot in itself. It's just a piece of metal. It only gets warm, hot, or cold by whatever we do to it. And that's an analogy with death. How we perceive it makes it what it is. What would you do today if you didn't fear death? How would you act? How would you feel? Would you feel liberated? Would you feel abundant? Just go out there and live it. Live your life, wouldn't you? You go out and be grateful. You go back to source. You go out there and pretend that you're a kid, and you won't watch any news, and because so what if Boris Johnson's saying have this vaccine, have this tablet, have this blah blah blah, stay at home, self-isolate, this and that, 2 meters, hand sanitize. Because if you didn't fear death, and that's the worst that can happen, then to you, then you would act from a place from there, go from a place from there. Because what if you fear of death? If you believe that a person is telling you that death is bad, you are unconsciously going to be controlled by what they're saying, and you're going to take actions to avoid what you're scared of. To avoid what you're scared of, and you're going to be a slave to it. You're going to be a slave to that fear. You're going to resist it. You're going to resist that. You're going to resist that fear. You're going to pay attention. You're going to pay attention. You're going to give energy to that person, that scientist, that doctor, that politician who's telling you that, who's giving you this impression that death is bad, and you're going to act accordingly to whatever they're saying, instead of acting with your own freedom of choice. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be 2 meters from people. I'm not saying we shouldn't be self-isolating. I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't be having a vaccine. That's not my point. The point is to get in a place that death is not bad in itself. It's neither good nor bad. It's just preferred. But we promote these horror. I think it comes from horror movies a lot. A lot of horror movies about death, and they paint this bad picture of death, and and all these TV programs where they talk about death, and movies, all these funerals. For example, now I'm thinking my funeral, it's going to be a celebration. It's going to be a celebration in my life, because I'm only going back to where I came from. For example, we tend to celebrate birth, but mourn death. We grieve in death. But essentially it's the same. An unborn thing, an unborn person is the same as a dead person in the now. Someone who's unborn and someone who's died, it's the same. But we tend to celebrate newborns and grieve death. But we don't know where that person's gone to. When someone dies, when someone leaves us, why are we grieving? Are we grieving for that person, or are we grieving for ourselves? I think we're grieving, we're releasing our own fears. We're releasing our own fears that we're scared of death. Because we can't be scared of something that's happened to someone else because we don't know where that person's gone. For all you know, it might be a wonderful place. And yeah, it's just when someone dies who's close to us, yeah, we release our fears outside our body. But I'm going on a journey now of celebrating death. It's inevitable, and it'll sort of release me from any fears I've got, any money fears, any relationship, any loneliness, any attention that my ego wants. It has nothing, because it has no voice. It has no voice inside of my body, because there's always a reverse clause. Anything like that, money, house, things I own, what someone says about me, someone's opinion, some sickness that I can recover from because I go running and I look after myself. I can recover. I've recovered from illnesses before. I've recovered from people not liking me. I've recovered from someone disagreeing with my opinion. I've come back from losing my job. I've done marathons before. I've come back from, I've had cold showers. I was scared of cold showers. I have cold showers and go in, feel great. I've invested. I felt scared about investing in coaching, thousands of pounds in coaching and programs, and scared of that. And I did it, and still alive. The ego has no control. It's just a voice. And death, How to Die. So that book it's on Audible, How to Die by John Rahm. I've just ordered it. I'm going to listen to it on Audible. I'll leave you a quote. Those who fear death cannot help the dying. Thanks for watching. Love you. Bleep.